Podcast. Pauli.
All right, let's dive in. This time we're heading to the Millerntor, home of FC St. Pauli.
Oh, St. Pauli. They're always good for a story.
That they are. 8 games into the Bundesliga season and still no home goal.
Oof, that's going to be frustrating for the fans.
You'd think so, but the St. Pauli Pop podcast tells a different story. They're more fired up about something else that happened during match day 8, the game against Wolfsburg.
So it's more than just goals then?
Way more. Think LGBTQ plus rights, fan culture, the whole shebang. We've got that podcast and a blog post from a diehard supporter, all pointing to the same thing. St. Pauli's about way more than just what happens on the pitch.
It sounds like we're about to get into some deep waters here.
Deep waters indeed. Okay, so picture this. Match day 8, final whistle blows, 0-0 against Wolfsburg.
Not the most thrilling result, gotta say.
Not exactly. But the podcast hosts, they're buzzing, not about the game itself, but about the rainbow theme planned for the match.
Rainbow theme, huh?
Yeah, a big statement of support for LGBTQ plus rights.
No.
They had these grand visions, like imagine drag queens escorting the players onto the field.
Now that would be a sight.
Right. And instead of that Hell's Bells entrance music, they were picturing something like It's Raining Men.
Bold move. Did it actually happen?
Well, that's where things get interesting. The reality, according to the podcast, didn't quite match the dream.
So that's where we start digging deeper.
Exactly. The podcast hosts go on about missed opportunities, internal debates among fans. They even call out the stadium DJ for sticking with the same old YMCA. You could feel their frustration, like they really wanted the club to go beyond just symbolic gestures.
Yeah, I get that. It's one thing to talk the talk, but walking the walk is where it really counts.
They had this great analogy. They said it's like taking your mother to a gay club.
Hold on, taking your mother to a gay club.
Yeah. Their point was sometimes you got to go beyond the subtle messages, shake things up a bit to really get the point across.
Okay, I see where they're going with that.
Yeah.
So did the club manage to shake things up?
Well, the blog post we have tells a bit of a different story. Turns out, not everyone in the St. Pauli community was fully on board with the rainbow theme.
Interesting. Not even at St. Pauli.
Apparently not. One fan group even decided not to fully participate, which kind of raises questions about how unified the fan culture really is on this issue.
Yeah, that's a tough one. How much do you push for change and how much do you risk alienating people in the process?
Right? And the podcast hosts bring up this point too. Some fans were saying St. Pauli's stance on inclusivity is already well known, so why even bother with these big displays?
Makes you wonder, where do you draw the line?
But then again, as others on the podcast pointed out, silence can be mistaken for agreement, especially when there's so much intolerance out there.
It's a tricky balance, that's for sure. You don't want to stay silent, but you also don't want to force people into something they're not ready for.
Exactly. So how do you reconcile those two sides? Well, that's what's so thought-provoking about the podcast. They don't pretend to have all the answers.
So they're just laying it all out there, letting the listeners grapple with it.
Pretty much. They're forcing us to think about activism, about finding that balance between pushing for change and respecting individual choices, even in a community as seemingly unified as St. Pauli.
It's a reminder that progress isn't always smooth sailing. Even with the best intentions, there will be bumps along the way.
Absolutely. And this whole rainbow theme really brought those bumps to the surface, didn't it? It wasn't just about the visuals or the music, but about this underlying tension between making a strong statement and maybe alienating those who aren't there yet.
Yeah, it's like they accidentally poked at a hornet's nest.
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And it all goes back to the leadership, to OK Gutlich and his vision for the club. Did they handle it well? Did they use their platform effectively without pushing away parts of their fan base? Lots to think about there.
Definitely food for thought. Makes you wonder, what would you do if you were in charge? How would you create a message of inclusivity that truly resonates with everyone, from the most diehard fan to someone just discovering St. Pauli?
That's a big challenge.
It is, but it's a challenge that reflects the bigger picture. How do we build a more inclusive world, not just in football, but everywhere?
You know, it's really fascinating how this whole rainbow thing has sparked so much debate, even among St. Pauli fans.
Yeah, you wouldn't think it, right? They're known for being pretty progressive.
Exactly. But the podcast, they play some fan reactions, and you can hear the different sides clashing. Some are all for it, calling it a powerful statement, while others are like, why even bother? It's divisive.
And the podcast hosts don't just skim the surface. They really dig into the details. Did the visuals work? Were the music choices right? They even analyze the stadium announcer's tone of voice. It's like they had this picture-perfect rainbow theme in their heads.
And they're not afraid to point out where things fell short.
Right. And this is where it gets deeper. They tie this rainbow theme to a bigger question. What does it mean for St. Pauli as a club to be truly inclusive?
Are they just about being known for their progressive values? Or do they need to actively push those values, even if it ruffles some feathers? They even quote OK Goalless, the club president. He's talked about using St. Pauli's platform to promote social justice, all that.
Words are easy, though.
Exactly. And the podcast hosts were like, okay, so did they walk the walk with this rainbow thing, or was it just talk?
Now it's our turn to chime in. What do you think?
Yeah, the podcast doesn't give easy answers. They throw out all these different perspectives, different opinions, and then it's like they're saying, all right, you decide, what do we do now?
It's a smart move. Makes you think for yourself.
Totally. It's not about preaching or saying one side is right. It's about having a real conversation, even if it means disagreeing or facing some uncomfortable truths.
That's the St. Pauli way, isn't it? Open dialogue, critical thinking, all that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And speaking of uncomfortable truths, we got to talk about the actual football match that happens amidst all this rainbow business.
Right, the goalless draw against Wolfsburg. Another blank at home.
Yeah, the streak continues. But even with all the rainbow excitement, the podcast hosts, they don't forget about the game itself. They analyze the tactics, Blessin's 3-4-3 formation, the midfield problems, the lack of goals, all of it.
So for those of us who aren't tactical masterminds, break down that 3-4-3.
3 defenders in the back, 4 in the midfield, and 3 up front. Sounds simple, but it's not working for them. The podcast hosts say the midfield's the weak link, not giving enough support to the attackers.
So the attackers are isolated?
Basically. And the podcast hosts, they even suggest swapping some players, bringing in more creative midfielders to open up defenses and create chances.
They've clearly put some thought into this.
Oh, yeah. They know their stuff, these podcast hosts. They're not just casual fans throwing out random ideas. They're passionate, and they want to see St. Pauli succeed.
And that passion comes through, even when they're criticizing.
Totally. You can hear the frustration about the lack of goals, but it's like they're saying, come on, guys, you can do better. It's tough love, you know.
And in the midst of all this tactical talk, one name keeps popping up, Johannes Eggestein. Talented striker, but haven't seen him score yet this season.
Eggestein. He's a hot topic among fans, and the podcast hosts are divided. One loved him, sees his potential, thinks he's the key to unlocking the attack. The other one,
Not so much.
not so much. He's pulling his hair out over Eggestein's missed chances, questioning his consistency and decision-making.
So it's a classic case of potential versus performance.
Exactly. Eggestein, he's got the skills, but something's not clicking. Is it the new league, the tactics, confidence? The podcast hosts throw out all sorts of ideas.
They even bring up his defense, or lack thereof.
One host was saying Eggestein doesn't press enough, doesn't win the ball back, which is crucial in Blessin's system.
Right, those second ball wins we talked about earlier. That's where a striker like Eggestein needs to step up. It's not just scoring goals. It's about being active, anticipating those loose balls, and winning possession to launch counterattacks.
It's like, you're working on a project, and you got to be one step ahead, anticipating those loose ends and keeping things moving. That's what Eggestein needs to bring to the pitch.
And the blog post mentions him too, suggesting maybe he'd be better in a different role, like a second striker supporting a bigger target man.
So lots of tactical debate about how to get the best out of St. Pauli's attack.
But before we go full-on tactics mode, there's another player we need to talk about. Kevin Behrens.
Ah, yes, Behrens. The podcast hosts do not hold back on this one.
You mean the homophobic remark incident from earlier this year?
That's the one. And apparently his actions in the Wolfsburg game didn't help his case at all.
What did he do?
He came on as a late substitute and seemed to be deliberately antagonizing the fans who were booing him, waving his arms around, even mocking their chants. The podcast hosts called it pure provocation, and they were furious.
So they're questioning why Blessin even put him in the game, knowing the situation was already tense.
Exactly. It raises a whole bunch of questions about a player's actions versus the club's values.
And it puts the club in a tough spot. Do they ignore it? Or do they take a stand and show that they're serious about inclusivity and respect?
The podcast hosts are hoping for the latter. They're saying that staying silent would be a betrayal of what St. Pauli stands for.
Which brings us right back to the heart of our deep dive. The rainbow theme, the Behrens incident, the goalless streak. It all ties into this bigger question of what St. Pauli represents in a world that often feels divided and intolerant.
And the podcast, They tackle all this with so much passion, and they don't shy away from the tough questions. They even make fun of themselves sometimes, like admitting their rainbow vision might have been a bit too ambitious.
But they're sincere and they want to see real change.
They even highlight some of the things St. Pauli is doing, like working with LGBTQ plus organizations and educating fans and players. It's not just about making a statement, it's about taking action.
It's a reminder that real change takes time and effort. You got to challenge those ingrained attitudes and build bridges. It's almost like we're seeing a mini version of society playing out at the Millerntor, isn't it? This inspiring rainbow thing. Then you have barons acting out, and then everyone trying to make sense of it all on the pitch, off the pitch. It's all connected.
Totally. And what I like about the St. Pauli Pop podcast is that they don't try to smooth over the rough edges. They're like, yep, this is messy, people disagree, and that's okay.
And they don't take themselves too seriously either. They even admit that maybe their rainbow dream was a bit too much.
Yeah, they joked about the logistics of having drag queens escorting the players and trying to convince the DJ to play something other than YMCA.
But even with the jokes, you can tell they're sincere. They want the club to live up to its ideals.
And they're not just talking about it. They highlight the stuff St. Pauli's actually doing, like those partnerships with LGBTQ plus groups and all the work they do to educate fans and players about inclusivity.
It's like they're saying, look, real change takes more than just grand gestures. It's about the day-to-day work, challenging those deep-seated biases, and finding common ground.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the off-the-field stuff, but we can't ignore the giant elephant in the room. Bayern Munich.
Ah, yes, the big one.
David versus Goliath doesn't even begin to describe it. And with St. Pauli still searching for that first home goal, it's hard to be optimistic.
Even the podcast hosts, who are usually pretty upbeat, they sounded a bit unsure about this one.
They know the difference in quality is massive, but there's still that tiny sliver of hope in their voices. They talk about St. Pauli's underdog spirit, their ability to surprise everyone.
They always seem to pull off a miracle every now and then.
They even jokingly predicted that Eggestein would finally score, and not just one goal, but two, against Bayern.
Well, stranger things have happened.
I wouldn't bet on it, but hey, it's football. Anything's possible.
Imagine that, though. St. Pauli, the club that represents fighting for the underdogs, taking down the giants of German football.
Talk about a story. But even if they don't beat Bayern, what we've learned from this deep dive is that St. Pauli is more than just a football club. It's about community, about standing up for what you believe in.
They've become this symbol of hope, a reminder that even in a world where things can feel pretty bleak, you can still find purpose and make a difference.
And that's the message I'm taking away from this. We can learn a lot from St. Pauli. Embrace those messy parts of life, challenge the status quo, and never give up on fighting for a better world.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
St. Pauli Pop Podcast. Pauli.